Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. I'd love to know. And if you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, let's jump in. The alien scout ship floated in the endless dark, silent as the stars around it. Its hull shimmered with stealth tech, making it nearly invisible to the sensors of lesser civilizations. For weeks now, its crew had been tracking strange energy readings in the outer rim. Faint blips at first, easy to ignore. But now, those signals had grown louder, stronger, impossible to dismiss. The scouts, from a proud and ancient race called the Varnari, had seen many strange things in their long travels, but nothing like this. Ahead of them, hidden just beyond a cold blue moon, was something they could hardly believe. The ship looked almost like a drifting wreck, hulking, still, unlit. But something felt wrong. Its shape was sharp, layered, built with angles no natural craft would ever have. It looked like a human vessel, but it wasn't. Not really. Their scanners bounced back garbled results, as if the thing was designed to confuse them. Its surface didn't reflect energy. It swallowed it. The Varnari captain frowned, his fingers twitching as the readouts poured in. The hull was not metal, not entirely. It was made of something else. Something that adapted, shifted, breathed. Then the name lit up on their console. THV Skybreaker. No registry, no record, no fleet assignment, just the name. Just the silence. "This isn't a ship," one of the officers whispered. "It's something else." And they were right. Because the Skybreaker had not been built to patrol or protect. It was not designed to explore or conquer. It was made for one purpose: to survive the end of everything. The Varnari scout ship held its position in silence, orbiting just outside the gravity shadow of the moon. Inside, the bridge was cloaked in dim blue light, monitors casting eerie reflections across the crew's faces. High Seer Narell stood rigid before the central display, his tendrils curling and uncurling in discomfort. He had studied humans for over a century, read their histories, reviewed their wars, and watched their species evolve from fragmented tribes to a planetary power. But what he saw now, what loomed quietly in the cold beyond that moon, was something that did not fit into any file or report. The Skybreaker was still, but it was not dead. The ship's readings made no sense. Energy output was both massive and silent, like a volcano beneath a frozen lake. No radio chatter, no beacon, no engine emissions. But the power signatures, they pulsed in impossible patterns, layered in harmonics that stretched across the electromagnetic spectrum. Every few seconds, the vessel emitted a low-frequency wave, like a heartbeat. Narrow leaned forward. "That's not a scan," he said slowly. "It's breathing." Behind him, his second officer stared at the data with pale, glassy eyes. "That ship shouldn't exist," she said. "Nothing human should be able to do this." But it did exist. And it was human, at least in origin. The truth was, the Varnari had always considered humans a minor threat. Aggressive, yes. Creative, definitely. But scattered, loud, clumsy. Their early wars were chaotic firestorms of brute force and luck. Even their rise into space had been more of a stumble than a march. But this changed everything. Narell's thoughts churned. If that ship was launched, he muttered to himself, if the humans needed to build something like that, what are they expecting? The words hung heavy in the air. The Skybreaker had no visible hangar bays, no escort craft, no obvious signs of crew life. But it was not empty. Its surface was thick with armor several meters deep, folded in interlocking plates of unknown material that shimmered like black ice. The few scanning pulses that returned from its surface were incomplete, as though the ship bent physics just enough to hide its true form. Worse still were the weapons. Dozens of turret ports were visible across the hull, each one with a different design, like a patchwork of technologies collected from separate war zones. Rail cannons that could pierce planetary crusts, plasma batteries with cooling coils the size of city blocks. But most disturbing of all were the open weapon channels, slots in the hull that weren't filled yet, empty ports waiting for weapons not yet invented. The ship wasn't finished. The ship was still evolving. Narell turned from the screen, his voice quiet but tight. Send a warning to High Command, Level 5. The communication officer froze. Level 5? That's extinction protocol. Do it, Narell snapped. The officer hesitated, his skin paling, but obeyed. Across the ship's encrypted network, a red priority beacon flickered to life, blinking the code only ever used once in the last 1,000 years. The same code that had summoned the Varnari fleets when their home system had come under siege during the Kralk incursions. But this wasn't war. This was something else. The Skybreaker didn't posture like an Empire's flagship. It waited. Its silence was not a threat. It was a warning. Why would the humans build this? The science officer whispered, eyes glued to the spectral readout. The answer came not from a screen, but from Narell's own memory. He recalled a long-buried report, one dismissed by the High Council as paranoid human speculation, a report filled with ancient debris fields, shattered ships far older than any living species, and strange radiation traces near the edge of mapped space. At the time, it had been ignored. Just another human ghost story. Now, it didn't seem so ridiculous. Because something's coming, Narell said quietly, and they're the only ones preparing for it. A cold realization settled over the bridge. The humans had not built the Skybreaker to conquer the stars. They weren't reaching outward anymore. They weren't colonizing or expanding like before. Their growth had slowed in recent decades, at least on the surface. But underneath, they had been fortifying, training, building fleets, not of many ships, but of a few monsters like this one. If they had made this, if they had needed to make this, then what were they expecting to fight? The bridge crew stared at the ship, some with awe, others with deep unease. But all of them felt the same icy truth settling in their bones. If the Skybreaker didn't exist, humanity would already be extinct. One of the junior analysts gasped suddenly. Sir, the power readings. One of the arrays just activated. All eyes snapped to the main display. Along the ship's dorsal spine, a thin blue glow began to creep outward, humming with low-frequency pulses. The analysts frantically recalibrated the instruments. What they saw didn't make sense. It's not a weapon, someone muttered. It's shielding. Against what? Narell asked. There's no threat. No response came, because no one knew. Whatever it was, whatever the Skybreaker systems were reacting to, it wasn't them. The Varnari scout ship had cloaking active, passive scanners only, no signals sent, No aggression shown, and still, the skybreaker was stirring, like a beast waking up because something had gotten too close. The sensor feeds began to flicker, not from interference, but from pressure. Space-time around the human ship was warping, just subtly, enough to make the ship look slightly bent in the visuals, as though its presence in normal space was a suggestion, not a fact. The lights inside the Varnari vessel dimmed for a second. Not a power failure, a pulse, like a wave of invisible force pushing against the entire hull. The silence was unbearable. Then, the skybreaker moved. Not its weapons, not its engines. Just a slight shift, a ripple through its outer armor, like a metal creature exhaling after a long sleep. Narelle froze. Did it just adjust its hull? The science officer's voice cracked. It's reacting to us. No, Narelle whispered, and his eyes widened. It's not reacting to us. It's reacting to something we can't see. Far beyond the moon, deep within the void, something had stirred. The crew didn't know what it was, but the skybreaker did. The glow along the skybreaker's hull continued to shift, pulsing like a heartbeat, slow and deliberate. On the Varnari scout ship, all activity had ceased. The bridge was silent, except for the soft hum of systems and the quiet tremble in the voice of the junior officer as he whispered, "It knows." High Seer Narelle didn't respond. He couldn't. Not yet. His mind was a storm of questions. The skybreaker hadn't activated any weapons, hadn't transmitted any messages, hadn't even turned toward them. But somehow, it had noticed. Not in the way other ships might, through radar or thermal readings, but in a deeper, more instinctive way, as if it could sense them the way a predator senses the breath of a smaller creature in the dark. He watched as the faint shield pulses wrapped tighter around the ship, knitting themselves into a dome of humming blue energy, a protective shell, layered and focused inward, not outward. "Scan the moon," Narelle ordered quietly. The science officer blinked. "Sir, you heard me." Hesitation filled the air, but she obeyed. The ship's scanners swept across the cold surface of the moon behind the skybreaker. For a few moments, there was nothing, just ice, rock, and impact scars from ancient collisions. Then, the screen flickered. A shadow, buried deep beneath the crust. Something massive. Narelle stepped forward. "Zoom in. Maximum resolution." The image cleared, just barely. Under the moon's crust, embedded in solid ice and dust, lay a shape that didn't belong. It was too regular, too symmetrical. Not natural, not geological, and certainly not Varnari. It was a ship. No, a husk. Whatever it had once been, it was now a silent corpse, twisted and burned and partially fused with the stone. Its surface was dark and ridged, like a skeletal shell. Even in its ruined state, it dwarfed the skybreaker. Its hull had been torn open in multiple places, exposing interior chambers that spiraled inward like a hive. The scans showed no power, no heat, no movement. But even so, the skybreaker had responded to its presence. "What is that?" the communications officer whispered. Narelle didn't answer right away. His eyes traced the jagged lines of the wrecked alien ship. It wasn't human, and it wasn't Varnari. Its architecture was wrong. Layered like bone, ridged like exoskeleton, curved and sharp in ways that suggested a species both biomechanical and predatory. I don't know, he said at last, but I think the humans do. A cold silence fell over the bridge. For the past 200 years, the Varnari Dominion had cataloged every species it encountered, mapped their technology, dissected their cultures, weighed them as threats or pawns. Humanity had been a puzzle, too aggressive to ignore, too disorganized to fear. But they had changed. In the last few decades, they'd stopped expanding. No more new colonies, no wide exploration efforts, just internal growth. Quiet, methodical, and relentless. Now, Narelle understood why. They weren't building an empire. They were building a shield. The Skybreaker's power levels began to rise again, slowly, like a heartbeat growing stronger. The blue light along its hull intensified, and one of the ship's dorsal fins slowly turned to face the buried wreck. "They're not aiming at us," the weapons officer said with a shaky breath. "They're aiming down." Before Narelle could respond, the ship's long-range array flared to life. A beam, not of energy, but of tightly compressed information, streamed from the Skybreaker, arcing toward a satellite in high orbit. The transmission was encrypted and dense, packed with layers of data wrapped in human military protocols. Their systems couldn't crack it, but they didn't need to. Because seconds later, the Varnari ship's sensors picked up something else. A response. A second signal, this one much weaker, echoed from the buried wreck below. It was faint, broken, almost like a scream dragged across centuries. The transmission lasted less than 3 seconds. Then it vanished, and the wreck was once again silent. The Skybreaker did not react outwardly. No weapons fired, no sudden maneuvers. But its shields grew stronger. Narelle turned to his crew. "That wreck is not dead." A chill ran through the bridge. "If it's still capable of signaling," he continued, "even that weakly, then the humans were right to build that ship." The realization settled over them like fog. The humans hadn't built the Skybreaker to fight other species. Not the Varnari, not the Zelnar, not even the Dominion fleets. They had built it to stand over a sleeping monster, to hold the line when it woke up. And now, it had twitched. "Sir," the sensor officer called out suddenly, "there's a distortion at the edge of our range." Narelle turned sharply. "What kind of distortion?" I don't know. It's like gravity is bending, very subtly, like a ripple." "Is it a ship?" "Number no engine signature. No heat. But something is there." The Varnari captain stared at the screen. The ripple was faint, like a stone tossed into the surface of a pond too vast to measure. But it was spreading, slowly, deliberately, and it was moving toward them. His jaw clenched. "Pull us back! Now!" The helm officer hesitated. "Sir, we're cloaked." "They already know we're here," Narelle snapped. "And that thing below just answered something we can't see. Pull us back before we get caught in the middle." The engines began to spool. Power flowed through the Varnari ship's frame. But in that moment, the Skybreaker moved again. A low hum filled the void. The great human warship rotated slightly, angling itself between the buried wreck and the faint incoming distortion. The message was clear. Whatever was coming, the Skybreaker would stand in its way. Not as a warning, not as a threat, but as a wall. a last line of defense between the galaxy and something it had forgotten long ago. Narelle watched the great vessel reposition. No panic, no rush, only preparation. The ship was awake now, and it was waiting. The Varnari scout ship drifted backward, its engines barely above idle, moving like a shadow through the void. Even as they pulled away, no one on the bridge dared to speak. They watched the skybreaker in silence, each pulse of its shield, each slight shift in its angular hull, like children watching a storm cloud crawl across the sky, waiting for lightning to strike. High Seer Narelle stood frozen, arms behind his back, eyes locked on the screen. "Status of the distortion?" he asked quietly. "Still present," came the reply. "Moving slowly. It's staying just outside sensor range, like it knows we're watching." A low murmur ran through the crew. That suggestion that something was out there, not just drifting, but aware, sent a new kind of fear down their spines. It wasn't the fear of an approaching fleet or a known threat. It was the fear of the unknown, ancient and raw. Something primal that every species in the stars still carried deep in their blood. Narelle exhaled. "Put a long-range tracker on that location. I want every drift, every fluctuation, logged." He paused. "And start passive comm sweeps on all channels. Human frequencies, too." "Sir?" his comms officer asked, blinking. Narelle didn't turn. They know what that wreck is, and they know what's out there. Sooner or later, they're going to speak. And when they do, we'll be listening. For a few long minutes, nothing happened. Just the hum of the ship, the quiet clicking of consoles, and the steady pulse of the skybreaker, now fully shielding itself between the buried hulk and the growing ripple in space. Then, a tone pinged on the console. "Sir?" the comms officer said, voice tight. "We've got something. Audio packet. Short range. Unencrypted. Origin. The skybreaker." Narelle's heart skipped. "Play it." A soft click filled the bridge. Then a voice, low, calm, unmistakably human. "To any observers, stand down. You are near a Class 7 containment zone. Remain silent. Do not engage. Do not transmit. You are not the target." The message ended. It was a warning. But more than that, it was routine. No panic, no urgency. The tone was practiced, like this had happened before. The crew exchanged nervous glances. Narelle turned toward the display again, his voice low. "They've done this before," he murmured. "Maybe not here, but somewhere." A thought began to form in the back of his mind, terrible and quiet. What if this isn't the only one? The skybreaker's shields intensified. A second layer activated, denser, tighter, glimmering with faint grid-like patterns. Some kind of multi-phase defense array. Not standard human tech. Advanced, refined, almost alien. Another voice transmission came through. This time, not a broadcast. It was direct, pointed at the Varnari scout ship. Unmistakably intentional. "Unidentified vessel. You are outside Terran jurisdiction, but within designated threat proximity. Identify yourself. You have 10 seconds." The voice was male, measured, not angry, but behind it was steel. Narelle didn't hesitate. "Open a secure line. Full diplomatic protocol." The comms officer obeyed, and within seconds, the bridge lights dimmed slightly as the line connected. A human face appeared on the main screen. Pale, stern, dark uniform with a gold emblem at the collar. Behind him, the Skybreaker's command deck glowed with amber lights and quiet efficiency. No panic, just readiness. "This is Captain Eamon Voss of the THV Skybreaker," he said. "State your presence." Nerel stepped forward. "I am High Seer Nerel of the Varnari Dominion. We were observing anomalous energy signatures in this sector. We meant no intrusion." Voss studied him in silence. Then with a slow nod, he replied, "You're lucky we're not in activation range." "I suspect luck had little to do with it," Nerel said carefully. "You knew we were here the moment we arrived." Another pause. "You're not wrong." "Then you know we saw the wreck beneath the moon." Voss didn't blink. "It's not a wreck. It's a shell." The bridge went still. "What do you mean?" Nerel asked. "It didn't crash here. It was buried here. On purpose. A long time ago." "By humans?" "No," Voss said simply. "By the ones that came before us." Nerel felt his stomach tighten. "We've been monitoring this site for 19 years, Voss continued. "It remained dormant until today. Something changed. Your arrival triggered a minor pulse. We've since stabilized it." "And what is it?" Nerel asked. "What lives beneath that crust?" Voss exhaled, slow and controlled. "You don't want to know." Nerel stepped forward. "I've seen the shield you're using. The weapons. That's not defensive tech. That's containment. That thing down there, it's still alive, isn't it?" Voss didn't answer. He didn't need to. Instead, the feed flickered briefly, and a secondary screen opened. A display of the buried vessel, overlaid with heat maps, magnetic fields, and strange waveforms. Deep inside the wreck, barely noticeable, something pulsed. A signal. Not natural. Not mechanical. Alive. "Your people don't understand what's coming," Voss said quietly. "We didn't either. Not at first. But we learned." He glanced to the side, then back at Nerel. "There are things out here that don't care about territory. They don't care about diplomacy or borders or fleets. They consume. They adapt. They wait until civilizations grow fat and confident. Then they wake up." He pointed at the buried ship. "This was one of them. And we're not sure it's alone." Nerel stared at the screen, his voice barely above a whisper. "Is this why you stopped expanding? Why your fleets vanished from the outer colonies?" Voss nodded. "We're not hiding. We're building. Every ship, every station, every colony, rebuilt, reinforced, not to fight you, not to fight the Dominion, but to hold the line against them." Silence followed. Nerel felt the weight of centuries pressing on his shoulders. "And if they wake up?" Voss's expression hardened. "Then we fight and pray we've done enough." High Seer Nerel said nothing for several long moments. The human captain's words still echoed in his mind like a tremor through glass. "Then we fight and pray we've done enough." It was a statement, not a bravado, but of resignation. A quiet understanding that the war they were preparing for wasn't about victory. It was about survival. Maybe even just delaying the inevitable. On the Varnari Bridge, his crew remained frozen, waiting for direction, eyes flickering between the screen and their instruments. They had come here expecting to observe a new class of Terran warship. What they had found was a grim truth, one the humans had shouldered alone for nearly 2 decades. Neril leaned in toward the display. "I want to understand," he said carefully. "If you're fighting something out here, if this is what your fleets have been preparing for, then we must share that knowledge. The Dominion won't ignore this." Voss didn't smile. He didn't react at all. Instead, he turned and motioned to someone off screen. A second later, the main view shifted to a projection. It showed a map of the outer spiral arms of the galaxy, beyond Terran territory, beyond Dominion space, even beyond the neutral buffer zones known as the void borders. Then new data was layered over it. Ghostly paths, thin as spider silk, trailing from uncharted regions toward populated sectors. "These are ripple traces," Voss explained. "Not energy signatures, not signals. Movement. Space itself remembers pressure, like water remembers a current. These patterns aren't natural." He pointed to a particular vector, one that curved in a slow arc toward the galactic center. "This path leads directly toward several border colonies. One of them was named Bellatrix Outpost. It no longer exists." Narel's brow furrowed. "I don't recall a battle report." "There wasn't one," Voss said. "The station went silent. No distress call, no warning, just gone. When we arrived, all that was left were scraps of metal, hull fragments, warped, some of them folded, as if the laws of physics had given up mid-attack." Narel's mouth tightened. "And what did your scans show?" Voss was quiet. Then he spoke a single word. "Teeth." The Varnari bridge went still. He elaborated. The wreckage had impact points that matched neither plasma nor kinetic weaponry. They were jagged, bitten, edges melted by something not chemical, not nuclear. There were signs of biomaterial embedded in the metal. Nerve tissue, cartilage, as if whatever destroyed that station ate it. A low ripple of revulsion ran through Narel's crew. Even hardened analysts looked away from their screens. "We traced the vector back," Voss continued. "We found others, dead zones, places where once thriving colonies just vanished. Some weren't even Terran. Some were neutral. One was Rotari." Narl blinked in alarm. "The Rotari. They filed no reports of missing worlds." "They don't know," Voss said, "because the colony was a black site, off record, isolated, no survivors, no signal. They couldn't afford to admit it happened." Narel stared at the screen. "All this time," he murmured, "the entire galaxy's been looking inward, at politics, at power, at each other, while something outside was watching, testing." Voss nodded. "We call them the Hollow Ones." That name hung heavy in the air. They don't speak. They don't negotiate. They don't warn. They come when you're weakest, and when they leave, there's nothing left to bury. He paused. "We've fought them only twice. Small incursions. Recon forms, we think. What we destroyed didn't bleed. It leaked. Its metal was alive. And the worst part?" Narel looked up, heart thudding. "They remembered us. The second time, they adapted to our weapons. We didn't win. We just survived." A silence stretched across the comms. Then, Narel said, "You should have told the Dominion. You should have told the Union." "We did." Voss replied flatly. But no one believed us. Neril opened his mouth to argue, but stopped, because he understood. The Dominion was slow to act. The Galactic Union even slower. Empires rarely believed danger unless it was knocking down their gates. What do they want? Nerel asked. The Hollow Ones. What's their purpose? Voss looked away for a long moment. Then, in a softer tone, he said, We think they're not from here. You mean from another galaxy? No, Voss said. I mean another state of reality, another layer. We believe they're what's left of something ancient, something that existed before matter settled, before stars. They don't feed on metal or fuel. They feed on structure, on order. Their hunger is entropy. He turned back to the screen. And the more we build cities, fleets, civilizations, the more they notice. A shiver ran down Nerel's spine. They want us because we're organized? Because we're visible, Voss replied. The room felt colder somehow. Finally, Nerel spoke. We need a summit. You must come before the War Council. Share this data. If what you're saying is true, this is no longer a Terran matter. Voss was quiet. Then he said, We're not ready. Not yet. There's more we need to uncover, but when the time comes, you'll be the first we call. The signal began to flicker. Wait, Nerel said quickly. One more question. Voss paused. Why now? Why did that thing under the moon respond today? What changed? Voss didn't answer immediately. His face was unreadable. We don't know, he said at last. But whatever it wasn't because of us. The transmission ended. The screen went dark. And somewhere beyond the moon, in the quiet dark between stars, the ripple in space grew just a little wider. The skybreaker vanished from sensors minutes after the transmission ended, slipping into cloak mode so advanced that even the Varnari's best instruments couldn't trace it. One moment it was there, glowing like a guardian in the void, and the next, only cold stars remained. High Seer Nerel stared at the empty screen. No one on the bridge spoke. The silence wasn't fear now. It was purpose. Everyone aboard had seen the truth, felt it in their bones. This wasn't just about humanity anymore. It wasn't even about the Dominion or the petty wars fought across the stars for centuries. This was something older, something patient, and it was moving. Nerel turned slowly. Prepare a report. Full broadcast encryption. Priority override. The comms officer hesitated. Sending it to? Everyone, Nerel said. Dominion High Council, Galactic Union Command, the Rotari Arcanate, even the Zelnar tribes. I want this in front of every species with a fleet. We can't afford secrets anymore. The officer blinked. Sir, you'll be violating interstellar code. We've already violated it just by being here, Nerel snapped. This isn't a border incident. This is extinction. The order was carried out. Within an hour, encrypted data packages were flying through subspace relays at light speed, screaming from sector to sector, reaching the leaders of the galaxy with one unified message. The Terrans were right. We are not alone. And the enemy is already here. The Dominion was the first to act. The War Council convened within days, with Nerel standing before them in the central chamber of the Obsidian Spire. The recordings from the Skybreaker played in full, every eerie scan of the buried ship, every fragment of distorted wreckage, and Captain Voss's calm, terrifying voice telling of the hollow ones. When it ended, the chamber was quiet. Even Warlord JX, who had once mocked Terran fear-mongering, said nothing. Finally, Grand Strategist Kareth stood. "We cannot wait. Begin full mobilization, planetary defenses to all colonies, recall deep space fleets, initiate emergency production protocols." Another warlord asked, "And the humans?" "We contact them again," Kareth said. "Formally, respectfully, and we pray they're willing to stand beside us." The Galactic Union met 4 days later in the star fort orbiting Malthion Prime. Delegates from over 40 species filled the circular chamber. Arguments, disbelief, denial, all were silenced when the shared footage was played. Some fainted, some wept. When the lights came up, the Zori ambassador, normally cold and calculating, stood and said, "For the first time in our existence, we must admit a truth we've never dared say aloud. We are not the apex predators of this galaxy." From there, the floodgates opened. Treaties were signed. Borders abandoned. The Union, the Dominion, and even the ancient secretive Falari agreed to one thing. There would be no more war between species. Not now. Not when the true enemy was watching from the dark. 1 year later, orbit of Sul. The largest fleet ever assembled in the history of the known galaxy hung in silent formation above Earth. Ships of every kind, Varnari dreadnoughts, Union gun cruisers, Terran black hole destroyers, even the Zelnar hive pods, wrapped in their eerie organic plating, all united, hovering beneath the shadow of something larger. The Skybreaker, reborn and upgraded, now led the armada. Its name was etched in over 24 languages across its armored flank. No longer just a Terran vessel, now it was a symbol of unity, of survival, of defiance. On its bridge, Captain Eamon Voss stood beside High Seer Narell. Neither man spoke. They didn't need to. Before them, space rippled. Again, just like before. But this time, the galaxy didn't look away. This time, it was ready. From the edge of perception, something stirred. A crack in the void. Shapes began to emerge, twisted, angular things with limbs of jagged light and hulls made of screaming geometry. They pulsed like hearts too large for flesh, surrounded by clouds of black mist that moved against the laws of gravity. The hollow ones had arrived. Neril exhaled. "They're waking." "They never slept," Voss said. "They were just waiting for us to get loud enough." Thousands of firing solutions locked into place, weapon banks charged, shields rippled with energy. And at the heart of it all, the Skybreaker spoke, not in words, but in sound. A deep, resonant hum, a warning, a challenge, a war cry. The first hollow shape surged forward. It didn't scan. It didn't send a message. It simply opened its mouth and screamed. And in that scream, 1,000 dead worlds echoed. Voss looked once at Narell. "Tell the galaxy." Narell nodded. They already know. Across every bridge, in every fleet, captains gave a single command. Fire. The void lit up like a sun being born. And so it began. The war that would decide everything, not for territory, not for power, but for the right to exist. The skies trembled. and the last warship of humanity led the charge.